Again, good afternoon and good morning, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Natasha Pasher. I'm a communications manager at Aspira, and our team is really dedicated to helping seniors make the important decision to enter their next stage of life, one that we hope will start at Aspira Retirement Living. To take you to this presentation today, I'm pleased to introduce you to Dr. Stacey Fritsch. She's a naturopathic doctor whose passion for science, health, and others is evident in both her clinical practice and daily life. Within her family practice, she uses an eclectic approach to help patients navigate their health. She completed a degree in biomedical engineering at the University of Guelph and then a 4-year medical program at the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine. During her studies, she worked as an intern at the Sherborne HIV Clinic and traveled India to volunteer with Child and Family Health and International Medical Program. Dr. Fritsch loves working with patients of all ages and health concerns. When she's not in the clinic, she enjoys spending time with her 2 daughters and husband on their family farm north of Port Hope. We also have here Andrew Craig, who is our National Director of Culinary Services for Retirement Division at Aspira, and oversees all of our culinary operations at all of our retirement residences. And his team is dedicated to creating a vibrant community where residents have choices and can enjoy pleasurable meals at all stages of life. Now on to the fun part. Have you ever wondered why you gravitate towards a warm drink when you have a cold? In today's webinar titled The Hidden Benefits of a Warm Drink, Dr. Stacey Fritsch will highlight the wellness benefits of this popular hot drink, along with hidden health benefits of each ingredient when you are down with a cold. As we move through the presentation today, please feel free to pop questions into the chat, and as we get towards the end, we'll go ahead and answer all of your questions and comments. Now over to you, Dr. Stacey.
Thank you. And thank you guys all for coming today and having me speak about this. Health and taking care of yourself is something that's very important to me personally and professionally. So I'm always delighted when I have the opportunity to talk to people about this passion. So thank you to Natasha for the wonderful introduction. She sort of covered the background about myself. Currently, I practice as a naturopathic doctor in the small town of Port Hope, which is in Ontario, about an hour east of Toronto. And like Natasha said, I have a sort of eclectic practice there, and I do see patients of all ages with all types of health concerns. And so one thing I just wanted to start off by saying is that anytime you're going to introduce something into your supplement or diet regime or start something new, it's always important for you to talk to whoever your primary healthcare provider is, whether that's a nurse practitioner, your MD or your ND, before starting anything, to make sure that it's safe for you. Because even though some things are natural, there still can be side effects or contraindications with different health conditions or different medications that you might be taking. So some people know what a naturopathic doctor is, but others, I still commonly get asked this. So I was just going to give you guys a little bit of background. Naturopathic doctors in Canada are a regulated healthcare profession. So we do go to university first, and then 4 years of a medical school, and then we write licensing exams and get regulated under your provincial government. And sometimes people ask me too, so-and-so about this naturopath, and there is actually programs you can take to become a naturopath, which are weekend courses and aren't actually the same thing as a naturopathic doctor. So I always like to differentiate that. And naturopathic doctors, because we are licensed, we have insurance and all that kind of stuff to help protect you. So if you are curious in adding someone to your team, I have some links at the end of the presentation, because it's always important to make sure that they're a licensed healthcare practitioner. So naturopathic doctors, I always like to think of us as a complement to the healthcare system and not an alternative. Lots of times patients say to me, "Oh, you're an alternative to my family doctor." And I'm like, oh no, I like to see us as a complement, because we have different areas of expertise. We much more focus on diet and lifestyle changes and using supplements. And really what we're trying to do when we work with patients is understand the root cause of their condition. So, lots of people have IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. And that's really just a a label we give it, like your bowel's irritated, but we don't know why. So working with a naturopath, you would really look towards finding what might be triggering those symptoms in you, whether it's a food you're eating or bad bacteria or something. And I always think of this example, like when people come in with skin issues, if you saw your plant in your house suddenly develop like a weird thing on its leaf, would you just slather ointment on the leaf to try to fix it? Or would you look at maybe, is the plant getting enough water? Are you overwatering it? Is it not enough sun? You look at the other factors that are affecting the plant. And that's sort of the same thing we're doing, is looking at what that person is eating or exposed to that might be triggering their symptoms. We also do a lot of work with patients to prevent disease and looking at blood work to see where they might be, susceptible to moving towards, uncontrolled blood sugar or that sort of thing. Our approach is very individualized. So we might have, 20 patients come in a few weeks, all with IBS, but because we are looking at the root cause of their problem, all of their treatment plans might be completely different from one another. And we try to use things that are not invasive first. The other interesting thing when you go see a naturopathic doctor, or difference from, say, seeing your family doctor, is most of our appointments, especially at the start, are 1 to 2 hours long, so that we really can gather extensive health history about you and understand you and how, your health is affecting you. So our scope of practice is quite broad. I just listed here all the things that we are allowed to do under the government regulations, which include drawing blood, interpreting blood work, doing physical exams, counseling for diet, acupuncture, botanicals, hydrotherapy. We can even do chiropractic adjustments, although most of us don't. We usually, most of us work with chiropractors as well, and we'll refer to them because that's really their area of specialties. So given that we have so many tools in our toolbox, we can really work with our patients to customize them a plan that works for them, because sometimes I have patients that are already taking lots of meds and they're like, I really don't want to swallow any more pills. Like, what can we do to solve this problem? And we'll look at their diet, or maybe we'll do acupuncture, or other patients who don't have a lot of control of their diet because they're traveling. So we might try to do more work then through supplements or other means. So we really do have lots of ways that we can assist you. So today we're talking specifically about herbal infusions and how they could support your immune system. And I think this is an important topic because our immune system is obviously really important to our overall health and how often we get sick, and then our ability to fight off illness once we do encounter a virus or bacteria. Because every time you go outside, you're breathing in all kinds of different bacteria and viral particulate matter. So it's not that we can live in a bubble and not expose ourselves to this. The best defense we have is to build up our immune system and then also support it when we get sick. And I always like to think of the immune system, I really like analogies with my patients, as like your own personal army. So in your immune system, you have different types of cells, different types of white blood cells. There's, leukocytes and neutrophils and phagocytes, and all these different cells are like different soldiers in your army with different jobs. And they are lining your skin. You have part immune surveillance on your skin and all your mucous membranes. So like in your nose and your digestive system and your mouth. And they're on constant surveillance for foreign invaders. So things that they don't recognize as a foreign virus or bacteria. And when they do see something, some of the immune cells will actually sort of eat it up, and then they put flags on the outside of their cellular membrane that kind of tell everybody else, this is what the foreign invader looks like. Everybody go out and fight this. And this is why when you do get sick, think of a cold, your throat will get swollen, or you'll get like congested in your head, because all these immune cells are flooding to the area. And we don't necessarily want to suppress that response because we need our immune system fighting the infection so we can get better. But there's lots of things that we can do to support the immune system and make sure that army is fighting the best it can, and also to reduce some of the uncomfortable symptoms, especially so that we can continue to get good night's sleeps and stuff, which is important to healing. So that immune system can be damaged by a number of things, including toxins, even ongoing stress, different types of things we're eating in our diet, medications. They all can play a role at over time affecting our personal army, depleting some of it. You know, sometimes when you get a blood draw and your doctor may say your white blood cells are a bit low, that could be a sign that your immune system army is a bit depleted and it's not really ready or strong to fight off another infection. So the best ways to support your immune system are always good food, good sleep, trying to manage our stress levels, exercising, and replenishing nutritional deficiencies, because that army does require a lot of different nutrients to be functioning properly. And, you know, I think like sleep and food, a lot of people like to skip over that and just ask me like, what could I take to help? But I always tell patients, you can't supplement yourself out of not sleeping well. I think sleeping well is one of the most important things to our general health, getting restorative sleep. And also when you're sick, one of the best things you can do is try to have a nap or rest and allow your body to take care of itself. So that's just highlighting some of the different areas of our immune system where this army is and how that's supporting us. So another reason I think it's really important to support yourself through illness is right now, more than ever, probably one of the problems we're facing as healthcare professionals is antibiotic resistant infections. And antibiotics are clearly one of the most important interventions in modern medicine. You know, sometimes people think because I'm a naturopathic doctor, I'm opposed to the use of antibiotics, but I'm absolutely not when they're needed. But there's often times where we can do a lot to help someone get over an infection without them. And the CDC has quite a few reports on this because they are quite concerned. In the US, they estimate that up to 50% of antibiotic prescriptions are unnecessary. And so that that's approximately 150 million courses of antibiotics that people are taking per year that aren't needed. And the problem with overuse of antibiotics is that it's allowing global resistance to some serious infections. And then we have a difficulty killing them, even with mixing of different antibiotics and such. So I think it's really important. And there's a lot of conferences and things that go on for naturopaths and medical doctors talking about how to evaluate things so we can reduce the overall amount of antibiotics that are being used, so that we're only using them when they're necessary and not creating so many resistant antibiotic or bacterial strains. Oh, and then the other issue is that antibiotics also wipe out all the good bacteria in your body. So part of your immune system is also having good bacteria that are lined there with the bad bacteria, and those have an important function at you know, in our gut, helping digest our food, but also helping protect us alongside the rest of our immune system. So when we take an antibiotic, it's some of those broad spectrum ones. They don't just attack the bacteria in our throat, they wipe out the bacteria everywhere, which can then lead to problems with that as well. So the question then is, what can you do when you get sick? And this is something that I see a lot of patients for. And originally this talk came out of the fact that I was asked to do a presentation on National Hot Toddy Day about whether or not a hot toddy could be helpful when you were sick. And I must confess, I don't drink hot toddies, and I had never prescribed a hot toddy before. But when I looked into it, I thought, well, the hot toddy in its, the form of it, if you take out alcohol, is very similar to hot teas and herbal infusions that I recommend to my patients all the time. So I took on the challenge of doing the hot toddy talk. So today I'm going to kind of talk about the hot toddy which would be basically an herbal infusion like I would normally use with the addition of alcohol, and why that could be beneficial or not. And also then the other ingredients that are in a hot toddy, but also you could call it a cold flu immune support drink. So when I originally did the talk, I looked to see if I could find a recipe. Hold on, I'm going to go here, that I thought had a number of different ingredients in it to help support your immune system. And I found this one that I was quite pleased with, which was called chili cinnamon bourbon hot toddy. So what I liked about it is that it had a number of different herbs that I felt could have really good benefit when you are sick. So this is the recipe that I chose, which tastes quite delicious actually. And I've been drinking it at home without alcohol. And it's a simple syrup you make up with some honey and maple syrup, and you infuse cinnamon and ginger and cayenne pepper into that. And then when you go to make your hot drink, you add that with some lemon and hot water, essentially. But in its most simple form, so this is kind of like a really fancy version, I'd call. But what I really do use in practice would be more simplified. Most people don't have that simple syrup brewed up in their fridge already. But something that'd be really easy. You grab a piece of ginger and some lemon, and then you can sweeten it with honey to your taste. And this is what I use all the time when my kids are sick or myself, and I recommend to my patients. And then depending what else you have in your kitchen, you could throw in some of the other ingredients that I'm going to talk about, like cinnamon or cayenne, depending on your taste preference and what kind of effect you're trying to achieve. One thing I did want to say while I was on this slide is that if you're drinking a black tea for pleasure because you like its taste, you can just throw the tea bag in with some hot water and that's fine. But if any time that you're drinking a tea that you want a therapeutic effect from the herbs that are in it, you need to steep it covered. And so either if you're making it in a cup, you can put a saucer on the top, or a travel mug is a great idea because it already has a lid. And that's because as the hot water is steeping with the tea, you don't want the medicinal agents to be evaporating. So also when I was coming back to the hot toddy, I found it kind of interesting because I was curious, I know in history they've used herbal infusions or teas for thousands of years. But what kind of was behind the hot toddy, and was there some benefit here to adding in the alcohol that I didn't know about? So they have been around a long time, and there is a lot of debate where this idea of a hot drink with alcohol came from. There is some various stories that in Britain, because it's always cold and damp there, when you went to the bar, they would add in hot water to a Scotch drink. There is an Irish doctor by the name of Robert Todd who found it was beneficial to prescribe brandy with hot water to his patients when they were sick. And there is some documentation from India showing that early as 1610, they would make a fermented alcoholic palm syrup drink for illness. So who knows, and maybe it was a combination of these different influences that came to develop the hot toddy. But even in the 19th century, I came across this article, and it's kind of funny. I didn't post the whole thing there, but it says basically if your kid has a snuffle or a fever or red cheeks, you could get back to work much faster if you make them a drink. And then it has a recipe for a hot toddy after. So having warm drinks with or without alcohol have been around for a long time and prescribed by doctors for people with different ailments, specifically of viral or bacterial origin. So I'm going to go over the ingredients in a hot toddy and why you may want to add in different ones to your drink depending on your symptoms. So to me, I think lemon is one of the staples of the drink or of tea. So like any tea that you might be drinking if you're sick, especially with anything congestion wise or mucousy, lemon would be an amazing addition. First, it's rich in vitamin C. So getting back to your immune system, if you have a deficiency of vitamin C, your immune system will not function properly to make the different types of immune cells you need vitamin C. And for them to do their job properly, they need vitamin C. It has been studied in tons of different research articles to reduce that taking vitamin C prophylactically and or at the start of an illness can reduce the duration, frequency, and severity of all kinds of different colds and flus. Another important part of vitamin C is it's a strong antioxidant. And this means, you know, when your immune system reacts to a virus or bacteria, it's almost kind of like if you imagine the immune system is out there fighting and there's like gunpowder and all this stuff in the air, that kind of happens in your immune system too, which is why there's that swelling there. And there's actually a release of different reactive oxygen species that can damage the tissue there. And this is something we really saw during COVID, that patients with more severe cases, it wasn't necessarily the virus that was causing the damage. It was the body's reaction, inflammatory reaction to the virus that was creating the more significant lung things we were seeing going on. And in several of the Asian countries and European countries, they were actually doing vitamin C IVs in the hospital and finding that to be really helpful in some of those cases. So vitamin C can play a big role, even in very serious cases of different viruses. The other great thing about lemon, and I think this is really important, is that it thins and reduces phlegm. So when you have a cough, you don't want to suppress the cough. The cough is there for a reason. It might be if your lungs are full of mucus or your throat from your immune system, you need to get that out. You don't want it to fester there because most mucus is a reaction of your immune system to a virus. But if it lingers there long enough, it can allow bacteria to grow. So when you have mucus in your body, the most important thing is to keep it moving and not use a cough suppressant. So the really cool thing about lemon is that it can help thin the mucus so that you can cough it out easier, which then will reduce your coughing because it's not so stagnant and sticky. So it has a really great effect on that. And then a note about vitamin C. So lemons contain natural vitamin C, but I just threw this in there because I often get asked by patients, if I get sick, how much vitamin C should I take? And that level is very individualized. To really know how much vitamin C you need to take is you need to take a lot of it until you basically get loose stool bowel tolerance. And that's how you know that you've saturated your cells and immune system with enough vitamin C that you're not using it anymore. And then the bowel tolerance effect happens. So in a given hour, you can only absorb about 500 to 1,000 milligrams. So when my patients are sick, I tell them take 5 to 1,000 milligrams hourly. And when you get, record that, when you get to bowel tolerance, that's how many doses your body requires and is using. So for some people, that might be 5,000 milligrams. And I've had people that were taking, 20 or 30,000 before that effect happened. So that suggested to me that they were quite deficient. And you're not creating any sort of toxicity problem because once you reach your level, you will poop it out. Honey is the next ingredient. So one of the benefits here is obviously its taste, but there's also other health benefits from adding in honey. One being that it's antimicrobial. So honey does have an effect against bacteria, viruses, and funguses, which is pretty cool. Even topically, there's a great company called MediHoney, and their products are used in hospitals all over North America and parts of Europe, in bacterial resistant infections, in people with diabetes, ulcers, in burn victim patients. And I have seen several cases of abscesses and stuff that weren't responding to antibiotics. They had resistant staph in them. And when they started using this medical grade honey from MediHoney, the infection healed up. So honey really is a potent antimicrobial agent. There's also several studies showing that when you use it in conjunction with colds, that the cough severity and frequency will reduce. Most of those studies have been done in children, but I don't see why it would be any different in an adult. The viscosity of honey added to a drink also helps to prevent or to make a protective barrier in your throat. If you have some pharyngitis or a sore throat, that's going to help the infection from spreading and also enable the tissue to heal there. And it has an immunomodulatory property that helps your skin cells actually heal. So after you've been cold and you've had a really sore throat or tonsillitis, the honey can also continue to help you heal that. Oh, there we go. So alcohol as an addition, so this would be when you're making a hot toddy versus just having an herbal infusion. And when I did this presentation live, I asked people, what do you think the benefit of adding alcohol to a drink when you're sick are? And everyone's answer was it might help you sleep better, which I agreed with. Alcohol definitely can have a sedative, calming effect. And a lot of times when we are sick and we're coughing and we're congested, it is hard to get a good night's sleep. So used in moderation to the right amount, that could definitely be a health benefit. Alcohol added to the drink might also having a warming effect, and we know it dilates the blood vessels, which allows us, if we are adding it with other herbs and things, it allows those herbs to distribute themselves more efficiently throughout your body. And from a botanist herbalist point of view, there's actually a lot of herbs that if you want to get the medicinal agent out of the herb, you actually have to extract it in alcohol. Some herbs you can extract the medicinal benefit just in hot water alone, like nettles, chamomile, those are good examples. But there is a lot of other herbs that if you just put them in hot water, the medicinal agent doesn't come out. So alcohol could potentially help that if you're using some of those herbs in your drink. Obviously, the cautions there would be if you're having excessive amounts of alcohol, or I'd even say more than one drink while you're sick, that could cause dehydration, which could definitely make your illness worse. Alcohol also will suppress the immune system, which could then make it more difficult for you to get over the illness. And alcohol does interact with some of the popular over-the-counter cold and flu medications. So you should obviously always be exercising caution if you're using alcohol with some of these medications. So my take-home message there is the way I usually prescribe herbal drinks when people are sick is I tell them to make them and drink them all day, because if you have a really sore throat, it's very soothing. When my kids are sick, I practically make a pitcher, like a whole teapot, and they're just sipping it all day. And you definitely wouldn't want to be adding alcohol to every one of those drinks. But if you were going to have a hot toddy, maybe, the one before bed might help you then sleep a little bit better at night. And obviously only if you didn't have any contraindications to adding that in. So cinnamon is the next ingredient, and this one is most people are very familiar with because it's used commonly in the culinary world. But there's also a lot of benefits when you're sick. Cinnamon does have some viral and bacterial action. In research, it's shown to be effective against certain staph infections, E. coli, food poisoning. It also has, out of all the herbs, it has what we call an astringent effect, which is a drying effect, which is really nice if you have a virus or bacteria that's causing loose or stool or diarrhea. Drinking cinnamon tea can really help that. Cinnamon is also warming, helps dilate and improve circulation to your hands and feet if you're really cold while you're sick, or, you know, your nose, your fingers are getting kind of that mottled appearance. And cinnamon, I mean, also the taste would be beneficial. And it's also a great expectorant for the lungs, which kind of like lemon, the one effect is it can help warm the lungs and thin the mucus there. But cinnamon also has this other really cool demulcent property. I don't know if you've ever put cinnamon in a tea or hot drink or even oatmeal, where it can settle to the bottom of the glass and it kind of looks gluey. That is a demulcent property. And what that does is when you consume it, it lines the lining of your pharynx and can help with line the bronchial tubes and that sort of thing to calm the inflammation there and soothe some of the discomfort that you might be having. Cayenne is next. This is probably one of the reasons I enjoyed that hot toddy recipe so much, was that little kick of the cayenne pepper in the simple syrup. And cayenne is a great addition if you like a little bit of spice, or even if you don't, but as long as you can tolerate it. It's one of my favorite tinctures that I take when I have a sore throat. One of its main ingredients is cayenne. And what I love so much about it is how it helps with pain. So cayenne has capsaicin in it, which has substance, which reduces substance P. And substance P is something that is sent. So when you have a sore throat, the cells there send substance P to your brain to tell them it's painful, because it, you know, wants you to be alarmed to that and do something about it. And when you take cayenne, the substance P is drastically reduced. And so that's why I love that tincture so much. When I have a sore throat, I take little drops of it every, hour or so, because I find if the pain is pretty significant, it will be dramatically reduced from that effect. You can also gargle cayenne just to, if your tonsils are swollen or bothering you. Cayenne also has vitamin A, which is great for viruses and has some antibacterial effects. And they did a study showing that it could be effective as in a tincture form, which would be a little bit more potent, but the tea form would still have some of this benefit, just milder, even in strep throat and even in some of the strep bacteria that was resistant to the common antibiotics they were giving. Cayenne also supports healing of the tissue because it's increasing circulation, and like cinnamon and some of the other spices, it's stimulant and warming. So ginger, this is also one of my favorites. It has a number of properties. So it's an antioxidant, so kind of like vitamin C, that's protecting you from the damage of the inflammatory processes that are happening when you're sick. Ginger has some of that effect. It's also anti-inflammatory, and there's a couple studies of its use in pharyngitis, which is inflammation at the back of the throat, and using ginger to relieve and reduce that. I also a really big fan of ginger in any cases where the person has some digestive upset. So like nausea, sometimes when you're sick, you also feel nauseous or lack of appetite. And ginger has a property which we call carminative, which is very soothing to the stomach and reducing nausea and sort of indigestion. So also when it comes to having a warm drink, I like to think of the mind aspect, the relaxation aspect, the psychological effect of having a warm drink. We do know that stress and anxiety chronically will depress your immune system, which means that you could be more likely to get sick, or when you do get sick, it might be more difficult for you to get over the illness. But also while you're sick, it's important to try to keep yourself relaxed too, because when we get too alarmed or worried, we turn on our fight or flight response, which is that stress response that's, preparing your body to fight or flight a lion. And and when we're in that response, our immune system is not working well and our body gets very inflamed. And so it's important that we try to relax and rest and, maybe do some deep breathing and keep ourselves in the parasympathetic nervous system, which will let us heal better. And obviously sometimes when we're sick, people are worried because they have to not go to work and are worried about the illness advancing or their symptoms. So the more we can do to help calm our mind and ease that, the better it is at supporting the parasympathetic response and our ability to get over the illness. And they have found that there is an effect on that from just sitting calmly and drinking a warm drink. There was also a study done in 2008 where they had people drink like hot drinks and then room temperature drinks and then report back on their symptoms. And they did find an improvement in the symptoms like sore throat and their tiredness, chilliness when they were drinking something that was hot as opposed to room temperature. So my other favorite therapy, in addition to the warm drink that I think goes nicely with a warm drink that I wanted to mention, is what I call the wet sock treatment. And usually when I first mention this to my patients, they're like, what? That sounds terrible. But essentially what you're doing is, and you're going to do this practice, or you can do this practice where I recommend it, is anytime that you got a lot of stuff going on in your head or chest or upper body. So like sinus infections, you can do it for headaches, ear infections, upper respiratory tract infections, anytime there's kind of congestion going up there, fevers, it works great for. Is once you go to bed, or if you're going to be laying down to watch a movie or something, you get cotton socks and you run them under as cold of water as you can imagine. And then you wring out the water so they're not sopping. And then you put the cotton sock on your feet and then quickly you cover it in a wool sock. And what that does is that coldness suddenly on your feet causes the blood flow circulation to pick up. And then all sort of like the heat and stuff from your head will actually circulate around to your feet, and it draws out some of the congestion out of your head. And it does sound like really hocus pocusy, but when I'm sick, I always do this, and I'll be in bed like coughing and mucusy. If I'm coughing too much, I'll put on a mustard plaster too, which I also love. But even without that, if I've just got a lot going on in my head, I'll notice suddenly I'm able to fall asleep because I have some relief there. And I also see it work really wonderful with fevers. Like if my kids spike a high fever, I don't put this on them for the whole duration. But when the fever goes up high, I'll put on the wet socks and I'll monitor their temperature over the next 45 minutes. And often just the wet socks alone will make it go down to 1 or 2 degrees if it's quite high. And then they're able to sleep more soundly and just feel more comfortable and manageable. So it does work. It's an intervention that you can easily add in without any harm being done. So that's all I have to talk about as far as the drink goes and the herbal tea. So I welcome you guys to ask me any questions. I did list here, if you are interested, you don't have a naturopathic doctor, but you think you might like to inquire or chat with one or add one to your care team. I did include links to the different provinces, that this is where the naturopathic doctors in the different provinces would be licensed, and they would be listed there. So you can search by region and find if there's one close to you. Most naturopathic doctors, so our services unfortunately are not covered by OHIP, except in British Columbia. There is some coverage there depending on income. And interestingly, in British Columbia, naturopathic doctors can also provide vaccines as well as pharmaceutical agents. So they're kind of a bit more progressive ahead of the times there. But otherwise, we're not covered by OHIP, unfortunately. But if you do have an extended healthcare plan or insurance, most of those plans do cover some naturopathic care as well. So, and that's my email. If anyone has a question that they would like to direct to me, I'd be happy to do so.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Fritsch. We really appreciate all the information. I am a tea snob at heart, and I think I just have learned that I need to one up my game. I've always enjoyed lemon and ginger and all that in my tea. So I think that I have some additional things that I'm going to have to start including. So thank you again for that information. We do have a few questions. However, before we move on to that, I'm going to introduce Andrew Craig. As I mentioned, he is our National Director of Culinary Services at Aspira. And he's just going to give you a few points on how we can incorporate some of these concepts into daily living at an Aspira retirement residence. So over to you, Andrew, and then you can jump off and we'll head into the QA.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. That was amazing. I love to hear about, especially the fresh ingredients, like using fresh ginger. And I actually have a fresh turmeric tea every day. I've tried to do that instead of coffee, but it really helps me out. So one of the things that I really wanted to talk about this as well is the social aspect of a hot beverage, and being able to get together in our communities with your friends and people in the community, whether it's a team member having a great interaction with a resident or residents that have friend groups within. I always liken back to my stories with my uncle, who would find a McDonald's, and there were groups of seniors that would just gather, and it's much the same in our communities as well. There is a really great sense of camaraderie when a group gets together and has a hot beverage. Options for us, certainly we do have a great selection of hot teas and available, and we now have our wonderful Mother Parker's fresh ground coffees, which are fun. I do also want to just mention our enhanced waters that were specially designed for us. They're electrolyte enhanced to really work on hydration and to really help seniors who tend to be dehydrated a lot replenish and refresh. And those are important parts of a day as well. I think if we can pop to the next slide, we've got just one more little thought here as well, is to bring your ideas to us and as residents, or to create ways to make an interactive event. So, if it's important for someone when you're consoling them or when you're having a celebration, that we love to be able to do something that is a little unique and a little an opportunity for you to have a great social event. So a little bit of a high tea or something else that either our resident engagement team or chefs can certainly look at accommodating or taking place as well. Hot beverages can be a big part of a social event and a social interaction within our community. So that was all I had to say today, and I appreciate it.
Thank you again, Andrew, for being here. And I know you've got some residents that you need to tend to. So it looks like all the questions here can be answered by Dr. Fritsch. So I want to thank you for being here and participating. And we hope to see you on another webinar again soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Andrew. And thank you, everyone, for being active here in the chat. I know that there's been some lovely comments here about how appreciative people are of the information that you've shared today and how useful it'll be. And just going back up to the top, I do see that there's a question here, so I'll read it aloud. Hello and thank you. Can you please provide any additional information regarding the food and beverages consumed in modern diets and how they alter pH levels of the body? And then does the temperature when consumed make them more base or acidic?
Yeah, I think that's a complex question, but there is obviously an effect from the food that we eat on the pH of the body. And I do find, so generally, you know, a lot of fruits and vegetables have a lot more alkaline nature to them. And typically the North American diet tends to be a lot more acidic by nature. This particularly, I focus on this a lot with bone health because the acidity of the body does affect your bones. If you're too acidic, you'll draw calcium out of the bones and can exacerbate osteoporosis. So that's an area I particularly help patients look at alkalinizing their diet. And I use a lot of greens powders and things for people to complement their diet because yes, traditionally the way most people are eating, or a lot of people are eating diets that are heavy in processed foods and just a lot less whole foods will increase the acidity. So that I am always working with patients to try to work on eating a bit more healthier and specifically incorporating more greens and stuff into their diet. I don't have any particular knowledge if the temperature itself affects the pH. I do know, like, if you overcook vegetables, you do lose a lot of the nutrient values there. Even in high school, I did a project on the vitamin C content of foods under different cooking processes. And the longer food was like boiled or microwaved or that kind of thing, it did have less vitamin C in it. So that's really all I can comment. I don't have any more information about the pH, unfortunately.
That's helpful. And there was an additional question tagged onto that. I just didn't want to overwhelm you all at once. But it says, additionally, during an illness, what's the body's pH response? Do you have any information on that?
I think you get more, I think the immune response makes you a little bit more acidic, but yeah, it's not, sorry, I don't have any much more comment about that. The biggest area I specifically focus on the pH is probably in chronic illness and bone health. So
great. Thank you so much for jumping in on that one. And Joy says, awesome info. Thank you so much. Let's see, someone asked to see your email again, so I did pop it into the chat there. So if anyone else does want Dr. Fritsch's email, it is copied right into the chat. You can use it there. And again, anyone who's actually registered for the webinar will receive access to it to view online later and share with someone else. So feel free to look out for that in your inbox. And just another thank you from Linda. So great. And thank you from Lorraine as well. So I think that's it. Don't see any further questions. So I will take this time now just to, how to warm your toes. That's a good question. I had to say, you did say it sounded awful with the cold socks, and my gut reaction was awful too. However, next time I'm feeling some pressure in my head, I think I'll give it a try because I'm always cold in my extremities, but this sounds like a really good use of time and help yourself feel better. So thanks for that.
Yeah, and that will make your toes feel warm eventually.
Okay, yeah. Ironic, but very, very good to know. And so other than that, do you have any recommendations on how to warm your toes?
I mean, the other thing you could do, usually if your toes are not warm, because your circulation isn't great down there. And so any sort of hydrotherapy of contrast, hot and cold, which I know once again sounds terrible, but putting like your feet into cold water, then hot water, then cold water, hot water, it creates a pump because it's dilating, contracting the blood vessels, which will then improve circulation to whatever area you're putting in the alternating water. Otherwise, you could always put like a rice bag or something, heat it up and then put it on your feet too. But also, I guess you have to look at reasons that, if those things don't help, why else are your feet cold? So sometimes that's a bit more systemic, like you don't have good circulation, or there's problems with the blood vessels or something too, which is things that we could definitely help you resolve.
Great. Thank you so much for that. So with that being the end of the questions, if you don't mind just going to the final slide, we just do have a short video that we'd like to end off with. Sorry, if you go back one more, if anyone has any questions related to anything Aspira, our retirement residences or anything like that, we have a toll-free number you can call, as well as an email address that you can send something to at any time. And we will just end off with a short video about life at Aspira. So If you want to click to that, we'll end off there.
For you to move. Maybe home has started to feel like more of a strain than a sanctuary. Maybe the cooking has become difficult, or the walls have become isolating, or maybe the stairs stare back at you. Whatever your reasons, it's time for a plan that puts you back in control. It's time for a plan that's full of first choices. It's time for Plan A. An Aspira Plan A is shaped by you for you, taking all your wants, needs, and nice-to-haves and melding them into a lifestyle that puts you first. Plan A includes putting all the things you like to do, from calm gardening to exciting new hobbies, right at your fingertips. Then, whenever you've worked up an appetite, a wide choice of comforting, healthy, and delicious meal options await. And Aspira is integrated with its local community and neighborhood, its heartbeat, color, and people woven thread by thread with ours. A Plan A that includes Aspira does all those things and more. Plan your retirement living with Aspira.